This is Beyond the Weekend, a podcast of Cornerstone Church, where we dig into the things we didn't have time for on Sunday. Welcome to BTW. Welcome to this week's episode of Beyond the Weekend. I'm Mandy Fowler, Director of Spiritual Formation for Cornerstone, and today I'm being joined by Pastor Barb Fay. She's our newest pastor on staff after having served as pastor for many years elsewhere. We are thrilled to have her step into this role officially. She's been director of small groups for some time now. How many years?
Almost 3.
Okay. But now you wear another hat. So talk to us a little bit about your role as pastor of call and discernment.
Yeah, thank you. Especially since Cornerstone has stepped out to be a non-denominational church. There are some things we need to make sure we have in place.
Right.
And one of those things is laying down a path for future pastors and how we will find new pastors when the time comes, how we will help people discern their call to be a pastor. And it's always been a passion of mine. I've worked with, and in my last appointment, I worked with folks who are being called and mentoring them and helping them make that discernment. So I think it's an important piece for Cornerstone in discerning and, what do I say, of just laying down a good, healthy path.
Process.
Yeah. So I'm glad to be a part of that, and then also wear the small group hat. So
Right. That's what we're going to focus in on today, because our sermon, our message from Sunday was all about the risk of vulnerability and why that's worth it. And specifically, as it comes to letting people into your life and them doing the same with you. And that looks like small groups in today's church, where we, back in the old days when a church was of, 50 people or something, you could kind of, it was almost impossible to escape people knowing you.
Right.
These days, as churches have gotten a lot bigger, I think it's easier for us to sort of skip this part and not really be known or know other people, that we can come on Sunday and enjoy the worship and the sermon and maybe a cup of coffee and say hi to somebody, but we can kind of just bypass the part where people actually know us.
Yeah. In fact, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have chosen a larger church for that reason.
Sure.
And I get it.
Yeah.
It's hard to be in relationships, and it's easy to just check out of that and say, I like the worship here. I like going to church on Sunday, but I'm slipping out the back door.
Right.
But it is worth it to reach out to some other people and learn about their spiritual walk, to learn about their lives, to let them learn about yours, so that we can be the people of God together. Rather than just putting my check in the offering plate, so to speak, and being a part of the ministry here, which is significant. But when it comes to our spiritual growth, we really do need each other.
Right. And
we want to help make that happen.
Right.
In such a large church, to just make it smaller.
Yeah. Something's coming to mind. I'm remembering a long time ago, I heard a guest speaker at my previous church talking about how God doesn't have a plan B. His plan A is people, to work through people and to, do his work out in the world, to be the hands and feet of Christ. And it's occurring to me as you're speaking of just like, as we mature in our faith, as we draw closer to Jesus, as we figure out how to live out the things he asked us to do, all of it requires other people. We can't, there's so many one another's in Scripture. I think we've mentioned that before. You can't, of course, you can believe in God and go live in a cave in the desert and commune with God in that way. But if we're to really practice the stuff that God is asking us to do, which involves extending forgiveness and, loving each other, loving our neighbor, doing, serving each other. All that stuff requires other people. And that stuff's really hard to do if you look up one day and realize that everybody here is a stranger to me. I don't actually know any of these people. And then, which echoes my experience. I'd been a longtime church attender, and at my last church in Los Angeles was a church of I'd say about 2,000 people. Maybe it was even bigger at the time, back in its heyday, like 3,000. And I remember enjoying that for about a year, and then looking up at one point and realizing I don't know anyone else here except my brother and a couple of our friends that we would, go to church and then go to brunch, and it was fun for a time. And then I kind of around the time I made that discovery, I also heard from the pastor, he made a statement from the pulpit. If you want to grow spiritually, there's no better way than to get into a small group. So I was like, okay. No one had ever said that to me before. And so I'm a introvert, a shyer person, don't love a situation where I'm going to go to some stranger's home and meet with a group of strangers. And yet I did sign up, and it was a revelation. I mean, that first group only lasted a year, I think, but I made a good friend in that group that continued on into my next group, and we're still friends today. And it really opened me up to that experience.
How did it help you grow spiritually?
Well, first of all, we did a study together.
You were on staff there. I mean,
no, I wasn't. This was long before. Yeah,
okay.
This was, I was attending that church probably 12 years before I got on staff.
Oh, okay.
So I remember we did a book on discipleship, a study. That was a pretty intense one, actually. Now that I look back at it, it wasn't a lightweight, it wasn't a topical, it was pretty in-depth. And I was immediately drawn in by this, there's a lot more to this than just enjoying worship and Sunday and going to brunch. There's a lot more to this. So we did that study together, and I'm pretty sure we only stayed together for a year, but, and that led into leading a group, and then, cut to today.
Yeah, right.
So always talk about, be careful.
Yeah, right.
What this could be a gateway into, but it really, I don't know where I would be in my spiritual journey without it.
Well, having been a pastor, preacher myself, I loved working on and giving the message on Sundays. I loved doing it. It was transformative for me personally and in our church community. But then you go home.
Yeah.
And everyone else goes home. What I love about being a part of a small group is we like to talk about the messages.
Yeah.
What did you hear Sunday? This part of the sermon meant this to me, and it's nice to be able to express that. But it's so eye-opening to hear how other people heard it and how God touched them in that, and it gives each of us in our circle a way to talk about how God is affecting us. We've said in our small group ministry here, it's not so much about information, like get a new study in you. It's more about transformation. And so while I love learning about the Bible and learning new things, what I really love about our group is when we just talk about the sermon and what did it mean to you, and how did you apply it this week in your life, or how did you, what is it you didn't like about it? What did you want to push back on?
Right.
Which
we always want you to do, by the way.
Yeah.
Never take everything that we say from the front as written in stone.
No.
We want you to wrestle and think and
yeah. And what does it mean to you? And oh my goodness, I never heard that before. And so it's a place for transformation. A sermon, again, loved writing, loved giving, love hearing them here. But it's just one-way communication.
Yeah.
I was always very cautious about the words I spoke, because there was an opportunity to talk about what I was saying. In small group, you can talk about what's being said.
Right.
And I just think it really is about being transformed within the community of Christ followers.
Right. And that takes some time. I've heard from people who maybe have had a bad experience with a small group, and that's made them a little gun shy about trying to do that again, which I understand. I've had some maybe not necessarily terrible experiences, but just okay, experiences with a small group. And what would you say to somebody like that who's maybe is a little leery of giving it another shot?
Yeah. I say, let's talk about it. That's part of the reason I'm here, is to help people find the right group. We have a volunteer campus lead at each of our 3 campuses who are very passionate about hearing your story and hearing what you feel like you're looking for in a small group right now. But the truth is every group is different, and of course that means every person in the group is different.
Yeah.
And I have coached and talked with folks to help maybe work through some of those issues. I say it's worth trying again.
Yeah.
Just like if you don't like a particular doctor, you go find a different one. No, I don't know. I think we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No.
And it's also a place for us to learn how to deal with conflict. And again, we have 2 training opportunities for our small group facilitators this upcoming fall and winter, because we do want to help them facilitate the best way they know how, and to give them some good tools. So I would never want to say being a small group facilitator, there's nothing, anybody can do it.
Right.
It's not a hard task, but it is helpful to have someone who is confident and has some knowledge in leading that discussion, so that it can be a healthy place where everyone feels welcome and safe to share.
Well, and let's talk about that a minute, because, if somebody's out there right now and they're like, I've never been in a small group and I need to try one, or I have and it was good or it was bad, whatever it is, and I would need to get into one again. And we have some groups we could put them into, but also we're always on the hunt we're always open to new facilitators.
Yes.
So maybe just talk a little more about what that involves.
Yeah. Well, depending on your sometimes it depends on your geographic location. And you say, in fact, I've got a couple right now who live quite a ways from campus, but they've led groups in the past and they really would like to facilitate again.
Yeah.
So we're finding a space for them here on campus.
Yeah.
But what I want to say, though, is if you feel like, I have facilitated groups in the past, or I'm very comfortable doing that, maybe God's knocking on your heart to do that, and let us know, because September 8th, we're having a fall kickoff for new small groups to form, and we have some training coming up August 28th that we can get you involved in. So we're here to help you do that.
Yeah.
And so if you're feeling led to lead, that's perfect.
Right.
I think the more, the better. Some people prefer morning groups, some people prefer evenings, some want on the weekend. We have single groups. Now, I'm not talking about our large group community where we have ministry, fellowship and study ministry for certain age groups, but we have multi-generational life groups. We have small groups with parents of young kids, because their schedules are.
Yes.
So there's really a small group out there for you. I believe it.
Yeah. Well, and it's not necessarily, I do want to talk maybe a second about expectations, because sometimes I've spoken to people, because I used to oversee
used to be me.
Small group ministry.
Right.
And that was what I did at my previous church as well. And so sometimes people would have these expectations that they needed to find a group of people that was exactly like them in their same age and stage and everything.
Right.
And then sometimes would get even more specific. I need a group in my agent stage, and it has to meet on Thursday nights. You know?
Right.
Get very specific. And then we wouldn't have anything, and they're like, "Oh, I tried."
Yeah.
You know, so we need you to be a little flexible.
Yes.
So that's crucial.
It is.
And then also, you know, you can't walk into it thinking this is going to be my group of new best friends. Yeah. It might. Sometimes that happens, and sometimes that can be a lifelong thing. We hear of groups that have been meeting together for decades. Sometimes that could just be for a season. Yes. I've had groups that were wonderful for, 4 or 5 years, and then people move away, and, things change. And then I've had groups where we got along fantastically and had great conversations. We never hung out outside of that. Mm-hmm. There's just different types of, you just never know what the mix of people is going to be like. Right. And God is definitely at work in that. You just don't know what it's going to look like.
No, and we've made a name change. You've heard me slip up once already.
I missed it.
Life groups. We used to be called life groups, but we've changed to small groups. And so my mouth says the wrong thing once in a while as I'm making this transition.
They're the same. If you hear them, they're the same thing.
But a different emphasis. I think sometimes people saw life groups as I have to be in it for life.
Right.
And I think what you have shared is very true. Some of these groups are for a season. And that's great and that's fine. Sometimes it doesn't really mesh well, and that's okay. Come to us and let's see what else we can find. However, trust that like the early church that we talked about in the message, we're all going to be coming from different places and phases of our life. And when we come together, we have Jesus in common, mm-hmm. and a desire to grow spiritually and to hear from each other.
Right.
If we keep it simple, if you will, I think the opportunity to grow and learn is really there. And the other piece is you need to, I'm going to say it, elevate this on your priority list. Mm-hmm. If you say, I am so busy, I have one night a week and this is it, and blah, 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 mm-hmm. to say, step back and say, I want to create a little more space for my spiritual growth. Mm. And what can I be flexible about to make this happen?
Right.
And I think when we make that a higher priority on the wrong, mm-hmm. I think our experience will be even better.
Right.
But yeah, some small groups do things socially together, and some are. We're here to support each other in mm-hmm. our spiritual walk, and mm-hmm. I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Right. We have fun when we're together. I think that takes some of the pressure off too, is to let your expectations be known. Mm-hmm. I've got one person who really is looking to make new friends and people to socialize with. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's good for them to let that need be known, and we'll find out if there's other groups who have similar need, and we can help match you up.
We also encourage people just to have your antenna up. You know, I witnessed something happen spontaneously in one of our ministry Facebook pages after the sermon yesterday. Someone in the ministry group said, hey, off of that message today, like, I do want a small group, and it's hard because they all have small kids. Mm-hmm. Who else wants to form something?
Excellent.
And that is...
At least you sent it to me.
I did. I forwarded it to you. I knew that would make you happy. But that is when those kinds of organic groups form. I mean, of course, we would love for you to come. Come to Barb, come to Jamie, come to our different groups people, Donna or Vic at the Heritage Hill campus, and Donna at South Wyoming, to help you find a group, especially if you don't know anyone else. We'll help you. But if you've been here a little bit and you know some other people,
just do it.
That is the way that I think is almost oftentimes more successful, because you already have a relationship, and you don't have to spend a lot of time getting to know one another because you already have that.
I absolutely agree, and I think that's just, to me, just so lovely.
Yes.
Let that happen naturally, and let us support you. If you've got room for other people, let us know. Maybe we can help with that. But we're here to help. But I love somebody took the initiative and said, "Who wants to do this?"
Yeah, that's how it starts. And that is risking something. We talk about being worth the risk. Maybe just as our final question, what would you say? So maybe somebody's listening to this and they're like, "I'm already in a group and we've been meeting for a while and it's good, but I don't know that I feel that level of, nobody's really being vulnerable or we don't get very deep, kind of stay in the surface." Like, what would you say to somebody's in that position?
I would say, I would love to talk with that person to say, how can you bring more depth to the group? How safe do you feel to say, I love the answer to that question you gave. What if we took it just one step deeper? Or to say, I like what you said, but here's what I'm thinking. So I'd love to talk with somebody about that and find out how safe you feel to do that. And if it's time to find a different group, that's fine too.
Which can happen, if you're looking for something where you are trying to go deeper, you're trying to maybe be more vulnerable or get to know people, build that trust, or you're trying to just go deeper into scripture and faith and all of that. Yeah, that might not be what everyone else in your group wants. So it might be time to part ways, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, but there's also nothing wrong with bringing some suggestions to the group and say, how would y'all feel about this, or adding the last 15 minutes for prayer time, or whatever it is that's on your heart. But we're really happy to talk with you and make some suggestions or, encourage you. Because I think sometimes I feel like once a group forms, then they're off on their own. And we want people to know they're not on their own. If you're having some issues, let us know. And we'd love to talk with you and make some suggestions or just listen, So
here to be a resource.
Yeah, be a resource.
Yeah, and not boss you around or tell you what to do. I think we've had some group at my last church and this one, we've had groups who are hesitant to reach out to make a formal connection because, I don't know, they think we're going to make them do certain studies or whatever.
No.
That's not going to happen.
No. In fact, like I said, for us, small groups are about transformation, not just gaining more information. And we want the small group to be the place where you really are growing spiritually together, knowing other people, build so much compassion and empathy within the body of Christ. We take it out into the world equipped and a little fuller of the Holy Spirit when we're together and not just sitting in the pew and then going to work. It's just a chance to know that we're not alone.
Yeah. That's great. Well, a great place to end. Thanks, Barb, for being here. And we have 2 more weeks in our Worth the Risk series. So we hope you'll stick around and keep listening. And we'll see you next week.
It's worth the risk.